Rabbi Yisrael Motzen serves as rabbi of Ner Tamid Greenspring Valley Synagogue in Baltimore, Maryland. He's someone who takes his sermon speaking slot very seriously.
So it is, in many respects, the most important moment of the week. I think this is the one chance that I'm going to be able to reach the, anywhere between 100 and 200 people or so. This is it.
Rabbi Motzen is that rare dichotomy of high intention. He's very thought out about how he goes about preparing and delivering his drashos.
I feel the need to justify everything I'm going to say.
But on the other hand, he places a premium on flexibility. He refuses to be pinned down to any one style or system of drasha.
I don't even believe you even have to connect the parsha to what you're talking about. The parsha of the week is what you believe is on people's minds at that moment. Sometimes I don't quote the parsha. If there's a connection to the weekly parsha, fantastic, but it's really not necessary.
What I love about Rabbi Motzen is the high standard he holds himself to, and his philosophy that the live drasha needs to be an experience you can't get anywhere else.
There has to be some emotional component, something that's there that you could only capture in the flesh, together.
We cover so many topics in our time together, like how to strike a balance between being vulnerable with your congregation, but not oversharing. The time Rabbi Motzen fainted in the middle of his sermon.
I fainted at the pulpit while I was giving a drasha. Pretty dramatic thing to do, right?
The power of having a partner to collaborate with, the need for truly honest feedback, and how to stay hyper-attuned to audience attention and engagement. I learned so much from my conversation, and I'm sure you will too. So now, without further ado, here is my interview with Rabbi Yisrael Motzen. So let me dive in because I know your time is valuable. So I want to ask you first, maybe you can describe your kehillah. You've been the rabbi there for 12 or 13 years already. So tell me a little bit about Ner Tamid.
Sure. So our shul is what I like to consider an out-of-town shul, which is in town. If you're coming from the tri-state area, Baltimore is out of town. But for the rest of the world, Baltimore is a pretty large Jewish community. And most of the shuls, thank God, the community has seen incredible growth. So what happens when there's growth is that you have this shtibel and that shtibel and this shul and that shul for each niche audience, which is beautiful. Our shul is not that. Our shul is the entire spectrum of, I would say, Orthodox Judaism, but not everyone there is observant. They want to be part of an Orthodox shul, but it really hits the gamut. There are people wearing black hats and, whatever, and there are people driving to shul and everything and everyone in between. And age-wise as well, over the past couple of years, thank God, it's really, this past month, maybe 3 births or so, unfortunately, funerals as well, but we have the entire gamut. There's a very vibrant young families population, but also a significant amount of elderly as well who are part of the show and in between as well.
Got it. Okay, so let me ask you, I want to understand a little bit about how you approach the drasha slot. What does that represent for you as a rabbi?
Okay, so it is in many respects the most important moment of the week, in the sense that you have the most captive audience. Thank God people, for the most part, are inside. People come back inside, thank God for that. And so it's really an opportunity. It's one of the few opportunities I have to engage with so many people at one opportunity. And the stakes are pretty high because of that. I'm really coming into it recognizing this is the one chance that I'm going to be able to reach the, anywhere between 100 and 200 people or so. This is it. So there's a heightened importance. And then trying to figure out what the appropriate message is because of that heightened importance is the next step. I suppose there's a line that I once heard of. I believe it's from Rabbi Alan Kimchi. He was a rabbi in the UK for many years. Now I think he's in Australia, I believe. Anyway, wonderful, wonderful rabbi. And I heard this from his son. I don't know if it was his original line, but he said the role of a rabbi is to make the uncomfortable comfortable and the comfortable uncomfortable. Sounds like you've heard it before.
Yeah, just recently someone quoted it to me, afflict the comforted and comfort the afflicted.
There you go. And that's really, really my goal. And that's, I believe, is, and going back to why it's so important, it also sets the values and the ethos of the show. This becomes, our show, I'd like to believe, is a place, and it is a place where people coming from all walks of life. There are a lot of, many people who've had difficult lives, some people who didn't, but a lot of people who find comfort in the show. And so a sense of giving them up space, giving them, giving voice to some of the frustrations or some of the challenges that they have, and giving voice to that, and acknowledging people who perhaps feel invisible in other settings. That's one element of it. And at the very same time, there's also a sense of, we're all human beings. We feel complacent, all of us. And so how do we move people forward constantly? constantly, making sure that we're never ever comfortable. So, so that's the goal of my drushes. That's also very much, if you were to ask my congregants, I believe they would tell you the ethos of the shul is one of being a welcoming place, especially for those who didn't find a place elsewhere to be welcomed. And that's people who enjoy having a sense of community, but also a growth-oriented place. And growth-oriented is radical. When you have a shul that's so diverse, it makes it fun and challenging. What does growth look like? For one person, it means something totally different than it always is true. But when you have such a wide, disparate audience, it certainly is unique in the sense that how we're all growing, or is going to be completely different.
Yeah, yeah. You had a quote at the top of your I call it Twitter, but now it's X. Preaching is cheap if it fails to meet human beings at their darkest points. What was the intention behind putting that out there?
It's I twofold, I guess. One is that sometimes they're on the most basic level. Sometimes people, I struggle with the sugar-coated approach to Judaism, where it's just like, and I say this with respect, thank you Hashem is a beautiful movement, and it brings a lot of good, but there's also like the challenges of Judaism as well, and there's just challenges of a relationship, like any relationship. There's the good, there's the gratitude, there's also the challenges that need to be met and dealt with. And so the notion of preaching, if we're just focusing on the positive, I don't think that's true to the reality of life. But also, I think it gives people a connection to what we need to meet people where they're at, and many people are in a bit of a dark place. We all have our closets, we all have dark places, and we need to kind of bring that out. The only way we're going to grow through that is by acknowledging those places. And if we're just focusing on the positive, then we're never really getting to the depth. The depth is those dark places, and that's where Rowan Williams, a Christian thinker and preacher, really nailed it on the head by saying that we really need to get into those dark places and to start bringing forth thoughts and ideas from there. That's the only way I think that real growth could take place.
Yeah. When I saw the quote and it was, you quoted Rowan Williams, for a moment I thought it said Robin Williams.
That would sort of make well.
Yeah. So how do you achieve, you said that since you have such a wide demographic in terms of ages, in terms of backgrounds, in terms of observance, how do I mean, is it a scattershot approach? What are you trying to, how are you trying to have so many diverse people grow in a specific way?
I don't think that a couple of things. One, I like speaking to my kahila. I like speaking to an audience that I know. I don't believe it's nice. It's nice to speak elsewhere and do public speaking, etc. But the value of speaking to your own kahila is that it's like a slow drip. It's not meant to be like, how often did you really hear a speech that really changed your life? It's rare. It's rare that something really, maybe it was the trigger for something that was already building up. But the beauty of having a kahila we're speaking to all the time is that it's a slow drip. It's not practical to assume that every single drasha is going to fully move a person. But if there's a constant drip of whatever values you're trying to promote are being promoted from time to time, week to week, or every few weeks, you're coming back more or less. I've heard from a wise individual that every rabbi has, one or two speeches, more or less. You could more or less distill every single idea into one or two ideas, and every speaker, forget rabbis. And there's a lot of truth to that. And if we recognize that and we think about different ways of evoking a response to that, and in that slow drip fashion, then it's not as daunting. I used to get my wife would always like joke with me how Rosh Hashanah and Kippur, I guess typical, the shul fills up a lot more, so put so much thought into making it incredible, and this is the one time no one's going to change from Rosh Hashanah. No one's gonna. I still spend too much time on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, but the point is that in reality, no one's gonna really change over a Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. It's not a realistic expectation of oneself. It's not a realistic expectation. Anyone who's changing in one speech is not a healthy person. I'm sorry, I'm gonna be a little blunt over there, right? It's not the way things work. So again, it's that slow drip approach, and that means that some days I'm gonna be focused a little bit more on this part of the community, sometimes a little bit more over here, but sometimes there's universal ideas, and you give a couple of examples, and for one person the example is going to be in one place, and another time, but there's a core value that still permeates, that's going to be relevant to every single person.
Yeah. What are your couple messages that you keep on coming back to, those themes?
So really going back, it's not just my job to make the uncomfortable comfortable and the comfortable uncomfortable, but it's that notion of growth, whatever that looks like to the person. It's giving voice to some of the challenges in Judaism. It's giving voice to some of the things that no one wants to talk about. Just giving a place where people could explore ideas that are sometimes taboo or sometimes complicated. That's I would say a side thing, but that's important. Where people, it's part of creating an authentic type of setting where we're real and we have real questions, we have real challenges. And so I guess those would be some of the major themes that I'd like to
Yeah.
focus on.
I went back and took a look at some of your sermons, which I'll link to in the notes. And the opening is always grabs me. The openings are very dramatic. I'll give you a couple examples. Last week was I love Lashon Hara, right? Pinned to the top of your Twitter account again also is I caused the family to leave my shul. I'm still trying to right my wrong. Hanukkah, I think you opened. It was you said I had an admission to make. So they're very, very either dramatic or thought provoking. Tell me about your intention behind the opening. How does that?
I guess the place I would start is that I don't like speaking. I don't like speeches. I guess some people would say I'm in the wrong profession, but I like to believe that's actually like a superpower when you're a speaker, because I'd like to hear less of myself. So how could I really have to, and because of that, I feel the need to justify everything I'm going to say. So I'm not going to I don't believe, I try very hard not to be verbose. I'm constantly whittling down to try to make sure, sometimes perhaps too much, but really trying to justify everything that's going to be said. And I don't take for granted that anyone's paying attention to me. So it's on me. It's my responsibility to grab their attention at every moment. I'd like to believe a drush is like an experience. Like there is, and you feel it. You feel it in the air. You feel the sense. There's a build. Whether it's the catching them or there's in the boldness in the beginning, or whether there's a build up, there's a crescendo. It's meant to be an experience. And if you can't hold everyone together for that experience, they could read an article. They don't need, if I'm going to justify standing up there, there has to be some emotional component, something that's there that you could only capture in the flesh together. And so that's part of my thought process. Actually, you being a comedian will appreciate this. Something which actually opened my eyes tremendously to this was actually a write-up about Jerry Seinfeld in the New York Times. This was maybe a decade ago. And I was blown away. He's a funny guy. You would think just naturally just spewing forth jokes. And he spoke about this one joke. I remember the joke. I don't know what the punchline was. I don't know what the joke was, but the punchline included a chessboard made out of water.
So marriage is a bit of a chess game. Okay, it's not checkers. It's chess. Complex movements, intricate strategy. Except in marriage, the board is flowing water. And all the chess pieces are made of smoke.
But he writes how he spoke about the fact that it took him years to figure out how to convey it in a way that it would land properly with the audience. And so the joke was there, but he recognized that for them to visualize a chessboard made out of water takes time to process. And therefore, they're not going to laugh right away, right? So I was blown away, just like all that thought going into how it's going to land. And so what he ultimately ended up doing is using his hands to show a water chessboard. Do you know the punchline? I don't know. I don't know what the joke was. Okay,
well, that is the punchline. The joke is about relationships, about how it's like the wife makes a move and you make a move, and it was something
water chessboard. Great,
yeah,
funny,
yeah.
Good. But the point is that it was so eye-opening to recognize, like, I constantly am trying to put myself in the shoes of the people in my show, like literal people. I'm thinking, like, how's this gonna land with a person coming from this place, from that place, and taking that into account and thinking about that constantly is a way to make sure that the drush is actually, again, an experience and not just something they could have read in an article, but really is engaging as many people as possible in that moment.
Yeah, I wish I could reach out and hug you, because I'm definitely of the same mind. On my website is a quote by Jerry Seinfeld, he says the real problem with stand-up comedy is that you have to justify why you're keeping a room full of people quiet while you're the only one up there speaking.
Fantastic, love it. That's it. That's exactly it. It's such an audacious thing, right? Like, why am I standing up there anyway? Yeah.
So what I wanted to ask you was, in terms of, you say that you feel this needs to be an experience, something that can't get anywhere else. Have you ever showed up and felt like I didn't have something worth their time, and ever?
Sure. Yeah.
And what happens in those circumstances? Do you still talk, or do you?
Okay, good question. Okay, sorry. So I typically, I have to feel it. I have to feel what I'm going to say. And sometimes I'll walk into a Friday. I try to write my drashos like early Friday morning, typically. And I feel like I'm not there. I'm drained. I'm not feeling, or I'm just not feeling something. So I will veer away. I will not give a classic drasha on a Shabbos like that. I will do something else. So for example, I will pick a section of the siddur that's different, that's unique. So for example, I'll break down the Misha Berach that we say for the government and spend some time like, okay, everyone pull out your sitters. We're doing something different this morning. Or sometimes I'll print out a couple of pictures from the Renaissance art, some Middle Ages, different pictures of different biblical passages, print out 3 of them and print out a whole bunch of them, give them out before the drasha, tell everyone to look at it for a second. What do you see? And have a conversation, and basically use those visuals as an opportunity to give a shear on the parsha, because if I'm not going to feel it, I will. It's not appropriate. It's not fair to them. And instead, it's not. Bottom line is that this is engaging. People happen to love it. Once in a while, if I'm really feeling creative and I need that break, I'll do like a little bit of a game show. Like I've done game shows like Minhag or Shminhag, where I will list something. I'll be like, okay, is that a Minhag, like a real legit Minhag, or is it a Shminhag, something made up? And like Shlisel Kala or something. And then go through the background of some common things or something of that nature. If I'm not feeling it, I will not. I will try. I'm not perfect, but I will try very hard not to put people through something that I would not want to experience myself.
That's amazing. And it probably also has the effect of having people not exactly sure what to expect when they show up Shabbos morning, if you pull one of those every now and then.
Correct. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And those don't get posted also, which is make sure that hopefully people come to shul sometimes. Yeah.
Okay, so I saw the sermons written out, and so I've never actually sat in one of your drushes, but I'm wondering, how does it work? Do you write it out first and then you deliver it from the written word, or do you go back afterwards and cobble together? How does it work?
So I try to write things out. I find there's value sometimes speaking without notes, and sometimes the passion's able to come through in a way that having notes in front of you does not allow for. Depends on the complexity of the drasha. Sometimes I find greater value being able to have it organized for me. So I'll typically try to write like a rough draft before Shabbos. Shabbos morning, I will constantly be tinkering with the drasha. I will, if you look at my drasha notes before I speak, it looks like origami, like I'm folded over here, folded over there, and it's basically a way of reminding me of different things that I want to change, because you could always improve things. They say MLK allegedly added part of the most captivating parts of his famous speech, "I Have a Dream," from the dais, right before he got up there. I don't know if that's true, but I once read that somewhere. But you gotta constantly edit. It makes it fresh to me, and there's always room for improvement. So what that allows for naturally is that I'm not reading word for word, but I have it in front of me, and I'm looking to those notes, and sometimes I'll use them more, sometimes I'll use them less. It really depends on the situation. Then after Shabbos, I'll rewrite it. Some of it's rewritten in a way that a reader could appreciate, and sometimes just because of all the edits that I've made in my head over Shabbos need to be reframed. And what I found is that we've kind of created I know there's not so much part of your question, but I've been posting them over the past couple of years. We kind of created a little bit of a Facebook community for our shul as well, between Facebook posts and Facebook videos and drashas, and that's almost been its own community. It's not the same. It's totally not the same as being there in person and growing together, but it's really created like a second community for our shul, which has been very, very nice as well.
Mm-hmm. Do you find it difficult to concentrate during tefillah before you speak?
Not really. I like davening.
Yeah. Your mind is not working, trying to figure out exactly how to.
Not at that point. No, I feel confident enough, but at that point, that's it's not going to get in the way of things. Yeah.
And what about afterwards? Afterwards, you find it a little bit hard to come down?
If I feel like I did a terrible job, it's a little hard to come down. If I feel like a good job, I'll just usually try to channel that into good Shemona Esrei, like good modem, like thank you God, that was good.
Oh, good. Okay, so you mentioned that you start on Friday. Now that's probably just the writing part. I would imagine that the wheels are turning even at the beginning of the week, knowing that you have this slot coming up. X amount of days, T minus 3 days,
Right.
2 days, 1 day. So talk to me about your process.
It really depends on the week. It depends on the week. Some weeks I finish my drush and I'm like, okay. And like literally the second I finish, like it just cleared room out of my brain. I'm like, oh, I know exactly what I'm gonna talk about next week. done. That happens sometimes. And then sometimes, so it's kind of in the back of my mind throughout the week. Some weeks more so. Unfortunately, with not unfortunately, fortunately, part of the job is not writing drushes. It's not really the what I'm occupying my day with. So sometimes there's more space in the back of my mind for the drusha to develop. Very often there isn't, and so it's like bits and pieces, and sometimes something will just like trigger something, and like now I have it. Whether it's through learning, whether it's through something I saw, a conversation I had, whatever it might be. I'm always there. It's on the back burner. It's always like collecting to some extent. Some weeks it's not. This past week, that Lashon Hara one, I had a rough week. It was a rough week. And I wrote that drasha Friday afternoon. It was whatever. I had a funeral in the morning, whatever it was. And it was just, I kind of scrambled. I actually did not like that drasha so much, but it's okay. but it was, but usually I try to have something, and usually, look, there's enough going on in the world that I feel is important. Maybe I'll address the question more succinctly. The parsha, and I think you mentioned this when we spoke a moment before, the Maggid Method, what you're talking about, creating the circles around it. I don't even believe you even have to connect the parsha to what you're talking about. The parsha of the week is what you believe is on people's minds at that moment. Sometimes I don't quote the parsha. I don't think I'm a bad person or a bad rabbi because of that. The parsha of the week is the parsha, like what's on people's mind. That's the parsha of the week. That's the parsha of the week. If there's a connection to the weekly parsha, fantastic, but it's really not necessary. And if I'm just gonna, again, if I have to justify what I'm saying and it doesn't connect perfectly, I'm not talking about it. I'm just not. It's just not appropriate. So because of that, because I'm trying to think about what's on people's minds, almost naturally, it's on my mind as well. So almost naturally, it's developing throughout the week as well.
Yeah, I love that. I was going to bring that up. It seems to me that you don't feel a need to link it back to the parsha. If there's a link, great. If not, then
if they want divrei Torah, that's not what I don't believe that's what a sermon is.
Yeah, and in addition, it also seems like you don't even need to get to the Devar Torah till maybe 3/4 of the way through, which was amazing. I mean, you have a strong message, and you get the audience in the congregation engaged and invested, and then when it's appropriate, you introduce the Devar Torah part as a support.
Yeah, I mean, look, the goal is to ultimately connect it to the Torah itself, but I don't mean a particular parsha. And I one of the perks of not learning in yeshiva or being trained in yeshiva, where they train rabbis, is that I don't have a template, which is the biggest gift in the world. I don't have like, here's my joke, and then here's my study, my psychological study, and my Dvar Torah,
statistic, and
like I'm sorry, I don't mean this in a derogatory fashion, but some people have like a template. I don't have a template. I was never trained, and which allows for an incredible amount of flexibility. It doesn't have, sometimes I will start the Dvar Torah, sometimes I won't. It doesn't have to, and it's a benefit because, to your point earlier, it keeps the crowd excited, but it keeps me excited. If I'm excited, chances are I'll be able to convey that to the kehillah, to the crowd.
Yeah. So, okay. So if you didn't take classes or you didn't take homiletics, or how did you learn? Did you learn on the job? You just...
So I had some good models of people. I spent some time as an intern at B'nai Jacob Shar Zion with Rabbi Moshe Hauer, who's currently the head of the Orthodox Union. So watching him was a masterclass in giving good sermons. I had great advice from a high school principal to never turn down a speaking opportunity. And so I would speak whenever I was given an opportunity, I would speak, and I would work hard, like whatever it was. And then I'd immerse myself into, when I first started, I spent a lot of time just reading through the sermons of Rabbi Dr. Norman Lamb, and the drushos of Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, people who were able to reach people. And also probably the most important was paying attention to the crowd. If I'm seeing how people are responding, that is the best education, was keeping my eyes open while I'm speaking, seeing how people are reacting, seeing if people are falling asleep, like I am totally like off base. No one, you cannot, if you're falling asleep on dress, like I am completely messed, like something's wrong. I remember when I first started, someone didn't like me so much. He literally used to pull out like a newspaper when I started speaking. It was great. It was the most humbling thing in the world. All rabbis need some humility at times. So it was so humbling. But you know what? He doesn't pull out a newspaper anymore. He listens and he gives me feedback. So the goal is, it's on me. Yeah, it was completely rude and completely inappropriate. Don't get me wrong. But it also gave me a goal. Like, how am I engaging this person? How am I doing so? So just seeing the crowd, most people are not going to do something so overt, but learning from the crowd, over time, taught me that was the best education.
Yeah. Who else did you look up to besides Rabbi Moshe Hauer and Rabbi Sachs. You mentioned earlier the quote by the Christian preacher. Did you go outside Judaism to look for speeches, famous speeches, or
Yeah, so I don't know for speeches per se. I'm constantly looking. Look, Jerry Seinfeld. I'm constantly looking for anyone who is engaging people, trying to see if there are things which I could learn from. With time, I developed a little more confidence in my own voice. You said that dresha that you saw pinned on my Twitter account. I have a poem in there. That took a lot of guts. Like to write a poem. It's not a great poem. And put it out there was a frightening moment. To feel comfortable enough doing that. But so again, initially a lot of immersion into those people and anyone who could teach me. And I still do, of course. There's so much to learn from other people, but also, growing more confidence in sharing my own personal voice, whatever that might mean, is something which I probably doing much more of now.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. So as a springboard, I saw a letter that you wrote. It was to strengthen the rabbi-congregation relationship a little while ago, and you wrote, "Perhaps if us rabbis could be a little bit more open and vulnerable about ourselves and our faith, we'd be inviting our congregants to do the same. The openness will help create authentic and long-lasting relationships." So tell me about your journey about because not everybody is open and vulnerable like that. There's a school of thought that I think I heard the phrase "sage on a stage." That there's the
Right.
removed from the Kehillah. Rabbi Steinmetz was telling me that there's a shul. I think it maybe Young Israel, Fifth Avenue or something, that the pulpit was you had to ascend a staircase and you talk down to the people.
That's my pulpit. I hate it. I mean, I'm up there. It's weird for me. I don't like it. Every once in a while, I'm like, I just want to speak from the floor, but
Yeah.
it's a big room, so it works. But it's a good question, and I'll be honest, I don't know. I don't claim to have mastered the calibration. The people who there's certainly a significant amount of oversharing going on in public speaking or the world, and I find it nauseating. If that's not too strong a word. It's very distasteful. I don't like it. And at the same time, I'm sure some of the sharing that I do makes people feel uncomfortable. It makes certain people have more sensitivity towards us uncomfortable. So I'm just constantly trying to calibrate. I check in with probably most often my wife, who is a good help on like what's too much, what's too little. She'll give me that good feedback, honest feedback. You need to have someone in your life who could give you the most honest feedback in the world, or else you're lost, certainly as a rabbi. So that's always helpful. And trying to find the balance between oversharing and allowing for some vulnerability. So, and it can't be constant. Look, any I statement gets more clicks, whether it's online or, on the pulpit. Anytime I could show you, there's an episode of The Simpsons. Am I allowed to quote The Simpsons in this? Is that okay? So the episode of The Simpsons where Homer was started teaching in some college or something, and no one was paying attention, and then he decided to mention something about his personal life. And all of a sudden his class started picking up, and all basically his class was just him sharing about his personal life, about him and his wife or whatever it was. And his class was highly popular. That is, that is a hazard of doing so. That it's going to get clicks. So how do you check yourself? You need some self-awareness, some outside checks and balances, but trying to straddle that line. I'll try to make myself vulnerable, try to acknowledge some of the emotions that I have. And again, without going too far. Again, I really have no idea what the right calibration. I don't have a science. Some of it's just the smell test. Like this feels like it's too much. It's too, and it's just not. It doesn't feel right. And sometimes there's a need to go more. I'll share with you because why not? Because I've shared this publicly. But about 2 years ago, I fainted at the pulpit while I was giving a dresha. Pretty dramatic thing to do, right? So it triggered some serious panic attacks, serious panic. I was speaking for 8 years, 9 years on the same pulpit, same shul, feeling rather comfortable up there, and it triggered panic attacks. And I didn't know what it was initially. I went through every health check in the world, whatever it was. Finally, I realized I was just having panic attacks getting up there at my shul. This is again, we just spoke about how important this part is, and I was struggling to get up there. It was the wildest experience, which was in and of itself very humbling and gave me so much more empathy. I'd like to believe I'm a pretty empathic individual, but it gave me so much more empathy to people struggling with different things. So that was something where if it would have happened in any other context, I feel like that's too personal. I don't I'm not walking around with a t-shirt with my whatever, what your mental illness is. I don't believe in that. But over here, this was happening publicly. People knew something was going on. So I dedicated a Rosh Hashanah Dresha to the topic. And was pretty vulnerable about the fact that like the fear like flashing through my eyes of like, am I done? Am I no longer? It was the hardest thing in the world to work back up to a place where I felt comfortable and confident getting up there and speaking, using that once they're already somewhat in on that experience, and that I felt okay, this is something now I could and should talk about. But there's and again, with a significant amount of editing and oversight with my wife, just to make sure, like, is this too much? Is it not too much? But so again, clearly I don't have a perfect calibration, but it's this constant push and pull of trying to allow for that vulnerability, invites people into my experience. We could grow together. I always think of the story of Rav Nachman, which I'm for sure misunderstanding. There's a story of Rav Nachman of Breslov about this prince who thinks he's a turkey, and the wise sage comes and joins the turkey under the table by taking off his clothes and like being under the table with the turkey, and eventually they the wise sage says, oh, turkeys eat with a fork and knife. Really? Yeah. And they start eating the fork and knife, and then turkeys actually wear clothing. Really? Yeah. Turkeys stop saying bak bak, they speak, and basically gets the prince up from under the table, but only by joining him under the table. So I think we grow together as a kehillah, and so we need to connect under the table, so to speak. I have no idea what the real meaning of that story is, but that's what it means to me. And we need to get under the table together, and through that we kind of grow together.
Yeah, it's amazing. How does your family feel about when you share stuff? How do they? I mean, you said your wife is she's your editor.
Yeah, I try very hard not to. I don't mention anything like real about my family. Like I'll say something which is clearly just like maybe about a 3-year-old saying like a funny word, but very respectful to my family's privacy. It's hard enough being a rabbi's son or daughter, and they don't need people to know about their intimate life. It's not appropriate. There's like almost no pictures of them online. Like I gotta give them some space.
Yeah. Okay, so now you have the opening, and does that come at the end? Does that come at the beginning? What's the structure? How do you put together a drasha?
I usually just start writing. I don't outline. It just kind of comes, and you quiet. I just like sit down. Again, like Friday morning, I usually try to wake up early in the morning. My phone's not buzzing. It's quiet. Nothing is going on, and I just let it flow out. Sometimes that works. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes I have to constantly come back and fix things. I don't have a great system. I mean, it's working, so I guess it's a good system, but it's not a system that I feel is able to be replicated in the sense that sometimes it's just that flow, and sometimes not as often, but sometimes it's just a kind of restructure, recognizing it's not going to land the right way.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever collaborate with anybody?
Yeah, you're the rabbi in Columbus, Ohio, a good friend of mine, Rabbi Goldstein. We're very different. We're very good friends. We're very different. We less and less. We actually started as rabbis at the same time, and so we would spend a lot of time initially on the phone before Shabbos. Sometimes we would actually work on it, a drasha together. Sometimes it was just the sharing of ideas. As time went on, and I think we each developed more of our own, it was almost like we were the best sounding board because we're really different people, and we're very good friends, but we see things very differently. And so sharpening each other, our drashas are not the same at all, but having someone to bounce things off of, who especially is different, who's going to see things differently, allows us each to sharpen our ideas. So as time goes on, less and less. I wish it was as often as it used to be, but that was very helpful to have a fellow rabbi to work with together initially.
Yeah. Do you rehearse it? Rabbi Goldstein told me he rehearses. He speaks out the drasha.
Yeah. Shabbos morning, I wake up a little bit earlier, and I usually go over the drasha at least once. On Rosh Hashanah Kippur, I'll go over a few more times. But yeah, I'll try to read it over at least once before I get up there.
Mm-hmm. Anything that you still struggle with? Things that you still struggle with when you in this area?
I constantly have a fear, but it's just a completely irrational fear of running out of things to say. I'm like, oh, I'm going to run out of things to say. I'm like, oh gosh, there's like this Torah, which is like endless, and this world, which is constantly wild, and there's so much to talk about. So I have to constantly remind myself. But some people save, like people have files and are very organized. They want to talk about like dogs going to heaven. Like I got like 400 files on that, and whatever it might be. And I don't. I feel like if I have something good to say, I kind of believe, there's a principle when it comes to tzedakah, you give and God will give you. I'm never going to be a big giver. I'm a rabbi. I'm never going to, but if I have a nice idea, like I want to share it right away. But sometimes that scares me, especially because it gets closer to Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, or a time I need to give a bigger speech. I'm like, oh wait, did I just waste a speech, so to speak, by giving it in middle of the summer when there's like a third of our shul here because everyone's out of town? So that's just a fear. It's an irrational fear, but it's consistently been proven to be irrational because again, the Torah is so vast that nothing, there's no worry. But yeah, if a fear of like, again, my fear also is getting stale. I want to make sure that I'm not getting too used to. It's very easy at some point to just run on accolades and run on the people that you are speaking to. But there needs to be growth. If there isn't growth in any area, then it doesn't work as well. So there's that fear of just of stagnating, and so that need to constantly like refine it, get better, and whatever that might look like. I don't have like a particular goal, but the goal is it has to get better. There has to be something more. There has to be something that's able to continue to grow and to cause people to grow together with you.
How do you measure success?
It is a profession which I don't believe allows for the measurement of success. I don't think. I mean, I can tell you the measurement of success of a drasha, but I don't believe this is okay. Everything I've said, I just want to now qualify by saying at the end of the day, all the work that goes into drasha, at the end of the day, I don't believe the real work is taking place when someone's listening to your drasha, right?
Yes.
I may have had the funniest, most inspiring, most out there drasha, and people love it. That is not real success. So success for a drasha, I'll get feedback. I'll post on Facebook. I'll see, enough likes or whatever it is, or I'll get enough feedback after. I can look at the crowd. That's success for a drasha. But if that's my only marker for success, then I'm failing as a spiritual leader. So the real success, it's bits and pieces you see here and there. Someone comes back to you a year later. By the way, I've incorporated this practice into my life, because of something that I once heard you say 2 years ago. That's success. It's that type of feedback where you say something, and someone says, that I've been really struggling with whatever it is, and now it's kind of shifted my perspective a little bit. That's the type of success, again, which is different, very different metric than successful drasha. The successful drasha is superficial.
Yeah. What are some of your go-to resources to look for Torah, for stories? Do you have anything in particular that you'll start with?
I don't like having go-to resources. It's anything and everything. I'll try to pull
You're
out
a moving target.
yeah. I try to pull out something new because again, if it's something which spoke to me last time, then it's not going to speak to me this time. I get bored of myself. I get bored of things very quickly. So
what advice would you have for, let's say, younger rabbis and going out into the field? What approaching this slot? What kind of, if you had let's say 2 nuggets of wisdom that you would give them, what would you say?
I would tell them to immerse themselves in and surround themselves and constantly, look at who the people are that are really, really resonating with people. And that could be in their own style. For me, Rabbi Lamb spoke to me as well. So I followed that route. For some people, that's not at all a style that they're looking to emulate in any way. But to really to find those people, to find role models alive or no longer alive that really speak to them, and to also have someone or some mechanism that could allow them to have real feedback. It's that dynamic. It's going back to the well, but also ensuring that there's some strong dynamic. Having yes people around you is a curse, and making sure that you have some way of checking yourself to make sure that what you're doing and saying is resonating. And again, your job is not to be, the Gemara talks about Yudah Nasi and then Exuvis, like your job is not to make everyone happy. Again, you want to make people uncomfortable, but the question is it resonating? Is it making a difference? And having some mechanism to measure that.
Okay. Last question I want to ask you is how do you decide what to talk about? I mean, this is, you have X amount of time and it's once a week. How do you decide what gets priority? What floats to the top?
Yeah, I wish I could tell you I have like a science for that. I should. And it's embarrassing that I don't, frankly. There are things which I think need to, well, a couple of things. Let's just say right now, after October 7th, I have to talk, the job is to respond to what's on people's minds, so that's simple to me. That's simple. Like, obviously it's my job to give people some direction, some comfort, some, et cetera, around what is clearly on everyone's mind. Similarly, if there were significant things going on in politics, it's not the rabbi's job necessarily to tell people who to vote for necessarily, but if there's something which is significantly on people's mind, clearly on people's mind, I believe, Judaism has something to say about it. It's not appropriate to shy away from it. It's important to give some perspective. Okay. Thank God it's not always chaotic. There isn't always legitimate breaking news. There are times when things are quieter. So occasionally there are projects. So for example, if there are things which I feel like right now, this is something that as a shul we should be working on, then I will find the way to slow drip that. I can't speak about it week 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, but I could do 1, 3, 7, 9, etc., and have those things. So, for example, this year in Rosh Hashanah, I thought the shul is in a place where we could talk about like daily Torah learning. So I pitched a program. I do at 12 o'clock. I do like a little daily Dvar Torah on Facebook, and then we grew that. So now we have people doing Daf Yomi, whatever it is. But so we're constantly coming back to that, constantly making sure that's there. So again, those are the bigger projects, and then sometimes there are fillers. Going back to Rabbi Lam, he has this beautiful piece that he wrote. I'm blanking on the title, but basically reflecting on his years as a darshan.
Confessions of an Unrepentant Darshan, I think.
We're good. Yes, yeah. That's it. And he speaks about the fact, and this goes back to something I mentioned earlier, that it's not a fair or normal expectation to give like a weekly drasha. Like he spoke about the fact that other people, and so I do give a weekly drasha, and that's fine. But recognizing that some weeks are going to be more quote unquote filler than other. Again, not heaven forbid wasting someone's time filler. It's not like just a musical interlude, but there is filler in the sense it might be interesting. We're going to learn an interesting shot, again, using the art or whatever it is, but it's going to be filler in the sense that people are not in a place that we're able to constantly be moving forward. And at least I don't feel like they are. One thing I learned from Rabbi Howard, which was very, very wise, was to recognize like what's on the calendar. It's like July 4th weekend. It's not the time to like go for fire and brimstone. Like people are not in that headspace, so being true to where people are at is also a critical piece of that. So all those factors go into what gets priority. That's not a very, all those different pieces are moving together.
Amazing. Okay, perfect. That's a wrap.
Great.
Yeah,
okay.
Really appreciated it. Really, I know you're so super busy, and it was tough to pin you down.
There's a secret that great public speakers know. Did you know there's a method for cutting straight through to an audience's heart, grabbing their attention and holding it, and making a memorable impact with your presentation? The best speakers in the world utilize it, and now you can too. Every time you get up to speak. Download your free Maggid Method of Public Speaking template at maggidmethod.com, maggidmethod.com. The Maggid Method will teach you how to find your authentic voice, craft meaningful presentations, manage people's attention, and build unbreakable bonds with your audience. Go to maggidmethod.com and download your free copy now. You've been listening to The Maggid Method, and I'm Daniel Steinberg. Learn more about the Maggid Method at maggidmethod.com, maggidmethod.com. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye.